Lieber Herr Heusgen, liebe Frau Bedos, meine Damen und Herren.
Christoph Heusgen,
20
dear Ms.
Kilometer trennen uns
Beddoes,
hier
ladies
vom
and gentlemen, it is only 20 kilometers from here that you to the concentration camp of Dachau. Dachau, one of the places where unspeakable crimes against humanity were committed by Germans, and in the name of the German people. The American Vice President visited Dachau the day before yesterday and said something very important afterwards. The memorial site, he said, and I'm quoting him, why we should be committed to ensuring that it never happens again. I'm very grateful to Vice President Vance for that important statement. This never again is the central lesson we Germans learned after the Second World War from the horrible experience of the rule of National Socialist terror. And that this was possible, by the way, is something we very much owe to the great support America extended to us then. This never again is the historic task, the mission that Germany has to live up to day after day, and will live up day after day as a liberal democracy. Never again fascism, never again racism, never again a war of aggression. And that is why the overwhelming majority of the people of my country stands up resolutely to those who glorify or justify the criminal National Socialism. The AfD is a party from the ranks of which National Socialism and its monstrous crimes against humanity, like the ones committed in Dachau, were trivialized as just a speck of bird poo in German history. Therefore, a commitment to never again is therefore not possible with the support. With support is not reconcilable with support for the AfD. For that reason, we will not accept that people who look at Germany from the outside intervene in our democracy, in our elections, and in the democratic opinion-forming process in the interest of this party. That is just not done, certainly not amongst friends and allies. We resolutely reject this. Where our democracy goes from here is for us to decide. Today's democracies in Germany and Europe are founded on the historic awareness and realization that democracies can be destroyed by radical anti-democrats. And this is why we've created institutions that ensure that our democracies can defend themselves against their enemies, and rules that do not restrict or limit our freedom but protect it. Defending freedom and democracy against their enemies, that has always brought us together as members of the transatlantic community, and that is what brings us here together in Munich today. As supporters of freedom and democracy, we stand at the side of Ukraine, which has come under attack. And I'm therefore pleased that the American administration has reaffirmed our common objective of preserving the sovereign independence of Ukraine. This sovereign independence has also to be reflected in the negotiations, and that is what we mean when we say nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. It is right that Ukraine is involved as we begin to talk directly with Russia. I myself spoke to the Russian president several times, trying to convey to him that we expect a just peace in Ukraine and explaining what that means for us. I trust that we all agree that Russia's war against Ukraine must end as quickly as possible. Hundreds of thousands are dead or have been wounded. Millions were driven out of their countries. What an immeasurable suffering. And on top of that, you have the increasing escalation and globalization of the conflict by Putin's Russia. Drones from Iran, cannons and troops from North Korea, mercenaries from Yemen. Part of that escalation are the dangerous Russian actions against member states of the transatlantic alliance, active measures such as the sabotage of subsea cables and other infrastructure, arson attacks, disinformation, attempts at manipulating democratic elections. Even after 3 years of war, the fact remains that those who aim to change borders through the use of force put the axe to our peaceful order. Borders must not be changed through the use of force. This principle must apply everywhere and at all times for everyone. If Russia was to win this war, and if Ukraine were to collapse, this would not lead to peace. Rather, it would continue to threaten peace and stability in Europe and beyond. There will only be peace if the sovereignty of Ukraine is assured. A dictated peace will therefore never get our support. And we will also not accept any solution that leads to decoupling European and American security. The only person who would benefit from this would be President Putin. We Europeans will defend these interests of ours with a spirit of self-confidence and unity in the upcoming negotiations. The Europeans are the party, the countries that support Ukraine, provide the strongest support for Ukraine. As long as it takes. And by the way, this as long as it takes does not end when the guns fall silent. At the end of every negotiated solution, the Ukraine must have the armed forces that it needs to ward off another possible Russian attack. This will be an enormous challenge in financial, material and logistical terms, and Ukraine will not be able to achieve this on its own in the foreseeable future. The support of us Europeans and also of our transatlantic and international partners, the partners of Ukraine, will continue to be necessary in the same way in which we've been shouldering major burdens together so far. According to the Institute for Weltwirtschaft, the Institute for the World Economy, America and Germany are the ones who provide by far the biggest support to Ukraine. In absolute figures, America is the first. In relation to its economic strength, however, Germany's support is 4 times higher than the American support. This is what we mean by effective burden sharing amongst allies and partners, and we want to stick to that burden sharing. That is the intention behind the $50 billion G7 loan. And Germany, too, will be able to continue to give this level of support to Ukraine. The debt brake enshrined in Germany's constitution provides for exceptions in emergency situations. I believe a war in the heart of Europe is an emergency situation. What else would it be? And I'm sure that we are going to receive a majority in the German Bundestag after the upcoming elections, even though some of us might want to avoid addressing this question before the election. And it is also beyond doubt that we have to increase significantly our defense expenditure, not only for Europe to become and remain an ally at eye level with the United States, but in order for us Europeans being able to continue to live in peace in the future. Our yardstick ought to be the threat that Russia poses and achieving all NATO capability targets that are required for that purpose. For me, it's always been clear that the 100 billion euro special fund that we set up after the watershed moment for the Federal Armed Forces is but a first step. Reaching that 2% target and keeping defense spending at that target will require an additional 30 billion euro from 2028 onwards. And every additional percent that we spend for our defense and on our defense would equal another 43 billion euros per annum. These are enormous amounts of money we're talking. By the end of the decade, we will be talking 3-digit billions range. Anyone who maintains that you could find that money by carrying out a cut here or there from the core budget is lying to the citizens of my country. And therefore, we have to make sure that right after the upcoming federal elections, we reform the debt brake in our basic law, our constitution that is, by exempting security and defense. And I predict here and now that we are going to get a majority for that too after the elections. These national efforts have to be embedded in strengthening Europe's capabilities. And that definitely includes that we have to ensure that we keep key technologies in Europe and make sure that they become established there. We also need a strong European defense industry with a permanent production of the most important groups of ammunition and weapons. This, however, is only possible if we combine orders at the European level and avoid to restrict unnecessarily our defense industry companies. And at the same time, I say that we were not going to give up the transatlantic integration of our defense industries. In the future, too, we plan to buy new American defense equipment. Again, here, too, we have to explain here and now how we're going to find the funds for that in Europe. And my suggestion would therefore be that we include an exemption, or rather a derogation, in the stability pacts of the European Union for any investment in defense equipment that lies above our NATO target of 2%, limited in time and whilst trying to preserve the fiscal soundness of all member states. Germany is ready to do so. What is at stake here is peace and security in Europe, and this has therefore to be the hour of Europe. Strengthening European capabilities has to take place in a clearly defined time frame. This would lead to the creation of a genuine win-win strategy. On the one hand, it would reduce the burden that the United States have shouldered in Europe, and on the other hand, it would lead to a stronger Europe within NATO. And it would also strengthen NATO as a whole, across the whole spectrum of the transatlantic dimension. Ladies and gentlemen, as I see it, the Munich Security Conference is the ideal place to discuss such ideas. When we take a realistic look at the world, we realize that it is high time we did. Thank you very much indeed.